This show contains movie spoilers and swearing.
Coming to get you, Barbara. Barbara.
For the love of God, Johnny.
Well, hello.
Hello, Bo. How are you doing?
I'm doing well. Let me
Sound good?
let me make sure. Okay, sounds good on my end.
Yeah, you sound good. You know, I always say you sound good anyway, do you know?
Well, yeah, you know, I've been kind of tinkering around with my setup, and I was worried that it wouldn't be picking up my my mic through Skype correctly. But hey, if it sounds good, I'm not gonna fix something until it's broke.
Your mic makes your voice sound sexy.
That's what I like. What I specifically asked for when I ordered it. I was like, I need a mic that makes me sexy.
Yeah, as you say, do you buy your mic from a magician's tent? This one makes you sexy.
Yeah. It was very much so.
God. How you doing anyway? You alright?
I'm good.
Been busy. You've been busy, haven't you? I mean, you haven't stopped, have you? I mean, it's like,
not this month.
yeah.
I'm still in the midst of the 31 days. I've got most of that done at this point.
Mm-hmm.
The lion's share of it's done. And then, you know, kind of deciding, hey, like, I'm just going to put all the shit I do under one banner. That's been really good, but also it sort of invites me to do a bunch more work.
Yeah.
And so I've been, you know, doing that stuff. So yeah, it's been a lot, but I've had a great time. Like, it's been a great Halloween, so I can't complain.
Absolutely.
Like, I've had a blast.
Yeah. And you've also got,
you know, I'm kind of like, you know, somebody was talking about Mel Brooks not retiring, and somebody asked him, like, when are you going to retire? He's like, what the hell would I do? Exactly. And that's kind of how I feel about it. I'm like, what else would I be doing if not this?
Well, I don't know. We can think of a few things, I guess, but there you go. We'll put that one out there for the listeners.
Yeah, look, hey, you know, my girlfriend works a lot of long hours too. She's, you know, like, that's the thing is, like, she's a nurse, so she works a ton,
right?
And so when she's working, this is what I fill my time with. And the more she works, the more podcast stuff I do. That's the equation.
Yeah, that's right. I mean, I've got a very understanding girlfriend myself. I think she secretly likes me doing this stuff. Do you know what I mean? You know, she kind of...
For sure. I know, like, Brandy and I have had that discussion a couple of times where she's like, I just like that you're interested in stuff and that you do stuff, as opposed to just sit around and, you know, watch TV or watch football and yell at the screen and stuff like that. Like, I think that it sounds like, much like your girlfriend, that it's, you know, kind of low-key support. She's not deep into it or anything, but
yeah,
she enjoys that I do it.
Yeah, I know. I think I found myself later. There's the sort of midlife that I am-ish now, focused on a lot of my hobbies, which I absolutely love, and does a hell of a lot for me. The podcasting world, I'm having an absolute blast with. As you know, I do all my treasure hunting as well, you know, like locally in fields and stuff like that, and also build all my movie props. So it's all developing, you know. It's
like you're what it's the Rags to, I'm going to get the name wrong, your Facebook page about all the
from Rags to Movie Props. Yeah, that's it. Yeah.
Rags to Movie Props. Yeah. I thought that was it. I was like, I doubted myself. Yeah, like that stuff is really cool, and I've posted a little bit about this here and there, but I've really gotten into a lot of DIY like holiday decorating and stuff. Like this is real old man shit.
Yeah. That's right. The old Sasquatch thing going on at the moment as well, isn't it?
The Sasquatch thing for sure. But like all last weekend, when I wasn't doing podcast stuff, I was like getting a cemetery set up in the front yard, and we were making these chicken wire ghosts and making sure the lighting worked on those and stuff like that. Just like making her neighbors frustrated, I'm sure, by the amount of graves now in the neighborhood. So I'll tell you, speaking of, since we're kind of tangentially talking about girlfriends, this is how I knew I had the right one. So we're setting up this cemetery in her front yard, and I'm making sure that the styrofoam tombstones aren't going to blow around in the wind and that kind of thing, securing them to the ground and whatnot. And she was like, I need to get some mulch so these look fresh. And I was like, I love you so much.
Yeah, there you go. You found that's it. You found the right woman in your life.
Yeah, 100%. It was so rewarding. I was like, this is why we're perfect.
How do you know you met the right woman or person in your life? They let me put gravestones in my front yard.
Not mine. Hers.
In hers. In hers. Oh, that's even better then. Oh my god!
Yeah, wow. For sure. Like we spend a lot of time just like, how can we make your house look scarier?
Yeah, let's do this.
It's great.
Oh my god! You know what, Bo? This happens all the time. I think I might just have to keep this sort of segment in. Actually, do you know what I mean? Because I feel like people in the world need to hear this conversation. Do you know what I mean? So.
The positivity of mulch in the front yard as freshly dug graves.
Yeah, and this always happens. As soon as I hit that record button, I'll say, hello, Bo, how you doing? I always think, I'm never going to say, welcome to Bitesize Cinema. It's just going to be, it's going to be about 6 to 10 minutes of conversation where it's going to be great stuff. So, to all you listeners out there, I've done this before. So, I'm going to start the show off with that conversation leading up to welcome to Bitesize Cinema, everybody. Okay.
Yeah. They're coming to get you.
Yeah, coming to get you, Bitesize. Yeah, Barbara. Today we are talking about a remake. I was going to talk about the original. I was really going to talk about the original, but I thought the remake is so good, and I hear a lot of people talk about the remake with Tom Savini. And so I thought, let's just talk about the 1991. So, Bo, what I'll do before we actually talk about the movie itself, let's play a trailer, and then we'll come back with a quick synopsis, and then we'll get into this movie. So we'll see you soon, people.
They came to pay their respects.
They're coming to get you, Barbara.
Why do you have to be so cruel?
What?
Show some respect.
Now they're running for their lives.
A biologist in Stockton, California have released reports focusing on the phenomenon, specifically on that trance-like state.
Every shelter is becoming a trap.
Are you sure we're gonna be all right?
Cooper, you gotta help me out!
And every road out
Don't stop no matter what happens.
is just another dead end.
They're coming right for us!
George Romero's Night of the Living Dead.
And welcome back, everybody. So, synopsis to this film. It's quite a long synopsis. When the unburied dead return to life and seek human victims, 7 refugees seek shelter in a house in Pennsylvania countryside. But the group is at odds as to how they should deal with the situation. It's directed by Tom Savini. It's a remake, as I've just mentioned. It's an 18, and I think it's got about 6.7 on IMDb. So, Bo, Night of the Living Dead. What can you tell me about this film?
Well, it is the story of the recently dead coming to life and feasting on the flesh of the living. This is a remake that I find really, really interesting.
Yeah.
Because, obviously Romero produced. He was in on this. Tom Savini, is it the only movie he's directed? I think that's right. Unless he's probably done like some Creepshow episodes or something like that, but I think this is the only.
I don't think so. I think he just did the prosthetic special effects. It's not the first time he's worked with Romero. I think he was in a film called Night Riders. I think it's an early Romero film with him in it. But I think this is his debut movie for directing.
Yeah. So he'd done a handful of Tales from the Dark Side episodes. After this, did a handful of other, Dead Time Stories, Chill Factor, a couple of other anthology kind of shows. Has done an episode of the new Creepshow.
Yeah.
And has a remake of Nightmare City in the works as his next feature.
That sounds exciting. I like the sound of that, especially with his name all over it.
Yeah, right. So yeah, it's kind of interesting that Savini decided, like, hey, I'm gonna direct a Night of the Living Dead remake, because you're kind of treading on holy ground with remaking Night of the Living Dead. Like, it's a classic horror film. It changed the game. I'm not the first to say it, but obviously there's not a Walking Dead without Night of the Living Dead. Certainly not as it exists.
Because I was thinking about this morning, actually, and I think the actual title itself is just great, isn't it? Night of the Living Dead. It's just... It's that thing in the horror world, isn't it, that we probably say quite a bit amongst each other without realising it's like Night of the Living Dead. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's that sort of phrase, isn't it?
Well, like I was talking recently about Carnival of Souls, and even though that movie happens before Night of the Living Dead, it's like that movie is a lot like Night of the Living Dead.
Yeah, exactly. That's it.
and I'm pretty sure, Romero had to have seen it. There's some of the imagery and so forth that had to have been an influence on him. But yeah, I mean, it changed the game. It was the movie that caused the MPAA to be like, hey, we can't just let everybody watch every movie because this will terrify children. We can't let kids see this. and I think it was Roger Ebert who talked about seeing Night of the Living Dead, the original, in '68 with a crowd at a matinee, and how traumatized the children in the audience were, and being like, that was one of the first times that I'd ever seen a movie truly horrify people. So yeah, like I said, you're kind of on holy ground when you're remaking this, but and he's Savini's an interesting choice for that because he doesn't have a huge directorial back catalog. There's not a track record there of he is this innovative horror director. And I would say that the thing that's most interesting to me about the Night of the Living Dead remake is that it's very similar. It has all the same beats and everything. Like, it's not trying to reinvent the wheel, but the changes it makes are clever.
Yeah.
And I really like that. It's, you're especially when it comes to the character of Barbara. That's really the thing.
Oh, God. Yeah. I was going to get onto that. And I have to say, I know there's a friend and listener and fellow podcaster now, Kate Pollock. She will get this. I was watching this the other day and I thought, Jesus, Barbara is Kate Pollock in this movie.
Right. Like, why are we fucking around? Let's just get out of
here. Yeah, she'll get that if she's listening. She'll probably like that as well. I know she'll like that. But yeah, definitely. I love Patricia Tolman in this movie. God, she's a badass. And like I say, you've got the remake, haven't you? But they've stepped that character up, haven't they, from the original one? And it's kind of like following her story. But then you're introduced to Ben, which is phenomenal performance by Tony Todd, because he almost gives like a sort of Shakespearean performance in this. I felt with everything he says just comes out with conviction, and he's got a little bit of sense of urgency at the beginning of this movie, especially where he's got like the crowbar and he goes out and he kills the zombies. And I like the switch between. So you're at the beginning, you've got Barbara, who is, you know, sort of upset. She doesn't know what the fuck to do, let's be honest. But then you have Ben, who's in control at this point, and then by the end of the movie, it's kind of like Ben, unfortunately, you know, spoiler, he does get killed at the end, and then Barbara's kind of like taken over, and she's become like the badass, you know, as a result. I like that switch of characters, but both characters kind of complement each other along the way. And then obviously you've got all the other characters in this as well. You've got Bill Moseley at the beginning. I'm kind of, this is how I'm doing. That's how I generally do bite-size anyway. I sort of flip from one bit to the other. Bill Moseley doing that.
Yeah,
you know.
I would have lost money, even like as many times as I've seen this. If you had told me, oh yeah, Bill Moseley's in the Night of the Living Dead remake, I would have been like, you're a liar. And I never remember that he is playing Johnny in this.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, that's a double look as well.
Every time I see it, it's a surprise. That's because I'm old and my brain is broken, and it's kind of nice that way. It's always a pleasant surprise when I watch this movie. Oh yeah, there's Bill Moseley.
Yeah, well, I suppose what you've just said there is Night of the Living Dead remake for me on the whole, because I kind of came to this one very late. I mean, really late. I only watched this for the last couple of years. I didn't even realise it was such a film. It kind of got masked with the original. And I only really knew about Tom Savini when I watched From Dusk Till Dawn as the Sex Machine character.
Yeah, sure.
You know, which he does great. And you got to remember when From Dusk Till Dawn came out in the mid-90s, and I enjoy that film. It's got a few issues here and there. But that was a time when you didn't really have the internet. So Tom Savini, I didn't realise that he did all this stuff, you know, that he was ex-Vietnam veteran, and then coming back on that, he got involved in, you know, special effects. And it's almost like Romero possibly saw something in him thinking, well, you've done everything else in your career, so why not become a film director, and why not have a go at a film I've already done, you know. It's like Romero's possibly had a vision here. And what's interesting, I think when this film first came out, it didn't do very well, but as time's gone on, it's become a bit of a cult classic, and I hear an awful lot of people, you know, sort of dote over this film now, I suppose, want for a better word, you know.
Yeah, and I think that's partly because it is a remake of such a stone cold classic. That I don't, you know, just to tip my hand, I don't think this is as good as the 68 Night of the Living Dead, but also how on earth could it be?
Yeah, that's interesting,
Yeah, so I don't, you know, you have to kind of separate the two films, and I don't really have a problem doing that. If the remake is good, I'll still enjoy it, even if I don't like it as much as the original. And I think this is good. I think you're right. I think it gets overshadowed by the original. And I think when it first came out, people, you know, there were kind of, I think, two camps, but I think the majority of, you know, especially mainstream critics, but I think horror fans too, were like, well, it's fine, but it's not the first one.
Yeah. Well, do you know what? There's another. I was thinking about this as well, because I watched this a couple of nights ago for the show, and when I was rewatching it, I thought this reminds me of another film that came out around about the same time, which is Psycho 2.
Just had a discussion last night about Psycho 2.
I know, I saw
another film that,
but you look
was much maligned at the time, but has really gained a lot of followers since.
I thought that there was some similarities in just the aesthetic of Psycho 2. Obviously, you've gone from a black and white movie to a colour movie. I think it's a really good. It's not a remake. It's obviously a sequel, isn't it? But I just thought you could put the two in the same sort of league. Night of the Living Dead, Psycho 2. You've got the originals, stone classics, but done very well. And I just thought that some of the camera cinematography that you see in Psycho 2 is very sort of similar to Night of the Living Dead remake. When Barbara's laying on the ground and that zombie's about to fall on her, you get like a sort of aerial shot. It's the same as when you've got like an upstairs scene within the house in Psycho 2 with his name's gone right in my head. How can I forget about the main character in Psycho 2?
Norman Bates, when he's up in the attic?
Yeah, when he's upstairs and you kind of get that sort of POV shot of him looking down the stairs. I thought, there's a few similarities there. But yeah, so it's... and of course I've got to mention the Zack Snyder's Dawn of the Dead here, just because that is a remake as well, which isn't too bad either. I don't know what you think of that remake, Bo.
I
bet I can hear it. I can hear it. I'm gonna chuck that one in there. I mentioned Zack Snyder.
I'll tell you, I like Dawn of the Dead as much, probably more than I like most Zack Snyder movies, and I think it's because of the James Gunn. That the script I think is really tight on Dawn of the Dead. My problem with Zack Snyder movies is when they're just overfilled with like slow motion shots and whatnot.
Yeah.
And I think Dawn of the Dead, being one of his earlier films, actually it has a much greater sense of urgency to it in a way that a lot of his movies don't. And again, just because it's got a good James Gunn script underpinning it. I like the Dawn of the Dead remake. I don't want my hesitancy to suggest that I don't. It's just I when I think about Zack Snyder, I think about his later work, even with something like Army of the Dead.
Yeah.
Where I'm like, it just misses me. But I really do like his first 2 or 3 movies. I genuinely like, and at a certain point, there was just a corner that I turned, perhaps personally, on Zack Snyder, where I was like, I think I'm good. I think I saw the Zack Snyder I needed to see.
Mm-hmm.
But I do like Dawn of the Dead. I haven't watched it in a couple of years at this point, but the performance from, I can't think of the actor's name. This is a terrible way to couch it, but it's the guy that ended up on Modern Family. Ty Sheridan, I think, is his name.
Oh, right. Yeah, okay.
The kind of asshole of the group.
Yeah.
That scene where they're talking about like getting to his boat and they're complaining about how he doesn't do any work, and he's like, well, the captain never associates with the crew. You guys have a good one.
Mm-hmm.
And it's his have a good one that really makes me laugh. I love what a shitball character that is, very intentionally. So yeah, I like the Dawn of the Dead remake a lot. I kind of think this is the better remake.
Yep. Yeah.
Just because it is so much more, it's both more faithful, but also, like I said, I think the changes it makes, not that the Dawn of the Dead changes aren't interesting, but I just find this to be kind of the right blend of very reverent, but also, hey, we're doing this in a modern context, so we're going to change the characters a little bit, especially the dynamic between Ben and Barbara. And we're going to shift things around just enough so that it's not the movie you've seen before, but it's going to have all the beats. Like, you're going to know where all this is going.
Yeah, for sure. I think the reason why I mentioned Dawn of the Dead was just a little bit of the comparison to how You got 2 remakes here from 2 classics, and they haven't done too bad, which is kind of successful in its own right, if that makes sense, because it's kind of like going into that sort of holy territory or whatever, isn't it? You know, don't mess with that. It's been done very well. It'd be like someone trying to make Jaws, God forbid. You know what I mean? It's that type of thing.
Yeah. Which won't happen until Spielberg dies, but I guarantee you the day his body turns cold, Universal is going to have a Jaws remake in production. Because he's stopped it so far, and God bless him for it. But or another, not quite the same thing, but like when they did the prequel to The Thing.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And it was like, all the pieces are here, but it doesn't feel right.
Yeah, that's it. Yeah, I think that's a good way to describe it. There's a little bit of emptiness in there, isn't there? Not all the planets have aligned with that. Yeah,
it has all the right ingredients, but somehow it's just like when you have too much, salt in the soup or something, and it comes out just this side of inedible. And I like a lot of the performers in it. I rewatched it not that long ago, and I was a little more forgiving with some of the CGI this time around. But yeah, still at the end of the day, it's like, well, at a certain point, this just becomes a monster movie where this creature is just chasing people around, as opposed to what the first film was, which was much more a study in paranoia, and that's why I love it. It's why it's my favorite movie. Like, The Thing is probably my favorite movie of all time.
Oh, you don't need to. Yeah, you know my thoughts on that one. God damn, I've even ripped one of the movie characters' names for this show.
Yeah. I mean, there's so much about that movie that feels perfect. And I don't mind people doing a remake or doing a sequel. I'm of the mind that you can do a remake or reboot or reimagine it, whatever the hell you want to. I can separate that from the original and still enjoy the original film. But if you want to, tread on that ground, make sure you're doing it for the right reasons, and make sure that you're bringing your A game, because you're being held to that standard. Yeah. And that's the thing, with like Savini's Night of the Living Dead, like it doesn't meet the high standard of the original, but also it's so close to the original that you can't really fault it for for being too irreverent, or like it doesn't have the right ingredients, like that Thing prequel. Like, all the right ingredients are here, and if anything, it feels weirdly like a throwback film, even though it was directed in 1990. It does feel like a movie that could have come out in 1980.
Yeah, and I think it's probably because of the practical special effects. That's something I know we talk a lot about, isn't it? But I think as soon practical tends to age a little bit better. I mean, if you compare this movie to The Mummy, which came out in 1999, which is CGI, I think that, don't get me wrong, I like the Mummy film, but I think the special effects has actually aged quite poorly for that movie. But I think if they actually used practical effects in that, it probably would have been a bit better. But with this movie, even though it came out a little bit earlier, it's kind of done itself a favour, do you know what I mean? Because I'd look at the, like the zombies in this, and I thought that they looked just the same as what they're using today in, say, like, my head's like a goddamn sieve today, Bo, sorry. The Walking Dead. The Walking Dead. Yeah. I thought, oh my god, the zombies in this film are just the same as the ones they're using today. Do you know what I mean? If not just better.
100%.
Yeah, that makes sense.
It totally works. Like it's because there's an evergreen quality to it. But the point, you're right about the effects, but I think when I think about this, like, oh, this feels in a lot of ways like a throwback even in 1990. Like some of the dialogue that comes out of Harry Cooper's mouth in particular, like calling people yo-yos and stuff.
Right. Yeah.
I'm like, that feels quaint. And it does feel like it doesn't quite belong in a movie in 1990, but perhaps that's just the character. But anytime I hear somebody call somebody a yo-yo, I'm like, what are you, 80?
Yeah, I know. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, and I'm glad you brought Tom Towles up as well. He's that's the other thing I like about this film is you've got obviously Ben and Patricia Tallman by playing Barbara. Are two central characters, I would say, but then you've got all the other characters in this, which I do actually find quite interesting in themselves. Even the arsehole of Harry Cooper. I think when you're in that situation, it's good that you can throw a character in like that, and I think he's great. They're interesting characters. They're side characters, but they're still watchable, and you kind of want to see where they're going to go.
Yeah, I think that William Butler as Tom in this, I think is really good too.
Yeah.
And yeah, like all the people in the house, like Katie Finneran, who has been in just everything. As Judy Rose. I think she's great in this. I just like there's a lot of really good kind of character niche actors rounding out this cast. And I think you're right. I think the performance from Tony Todd is very Shakespearean. Like he's very, very emotive. Like he's not quite as over emotional as Barbara was in the original Night of the Living Dead. Who's a character who just shows up and is mostly catatonic for the movie.
Yeah.
In this one, she kind of, you really chart her path. I think you're right about this kind of being her story.
Yeah.
Where it's her starting in the cemetery, being, the dutiful daughter and having this confrontation with her brother and then being completely freaked out. But also early on, even Ben says is like, I know you can fight because clearly you just did.
Yeah.
And I need you to hold your shit together. And she not only holds her shit together, but begins to deal with the situation in a more practical way than anybody else. Even Ben, like she surpasses Ben in terms of just the cold logic of we should leave. Like that scene where they're boarding up the house and she's watching the zombies sort of gather when she's like, this is a bad idea. We should leave. We should get out of here right now. They're slow enough that we can get away from them and we can get to safety.
Yeah, I think I've noticed this before as well, and I think Danny Boyle wrote this without really noticing in his 28 Days Later movie. So you've got the Cillian Murphy character at the beginning who's kind of like, what the fuck's going on? And he's like, come out from the hospital and he's just walking about. And he's like the weak character to start with. And then he meets the incredible, I can't remember her name now, but there's the incredible actress in that who originally starts off as the badass. Do you know what I mean? She's going around. She's basically saying to him, you got to fucking stand up to survive. If you don't, you're going to die. But then at the end of 28 Days Later, Cillian Murphy becomes this badass and he has to go and rescue her from the soldiers at the end. So I do like that in the movie. Do you know what I mean? And it is that sort of journey of someone who's weak to start with, and I think you're going to be in this situation. Do you know what I mean? If there's a zombie apocalypse out there right now where we're sitting, you're probably going to go, what the fuck? And then at that point, some point, you're probably either going to step up or you're not, and in this case they do. And I like that storytelling, which is kind of cool.
Yeah, and another thing I really dig about it is both Ben and especially Barbara at the end of the movie have those moments where they're like, they just sort of explode in the rage and sorrow of the moment.
Yeah.
Like it's the scene you were talking about with Ben when he's got the crowbar outside and he's killing the zombies that have shown up early.
Yeah.
And kind of understanding that you've just got to destroy the brain and all that kind of thing. There's a practical element to that scene as well. But it's him staring up at the sky and yelling, "God damn you!" And that's clearly aimed at God himself. Of just like, you have fucked us as a species. Like, maybe we were asking for it, but this is what a horrible thing to visit upon the earth.
Yeah, that's interesting. Yeah, I like that.
It's terrific. And then, he gives the "goddamn all of you," and I think one is directed at God and one is directed at the zombies.
Yeah.
And Barbara is watching this like, oh well, I think he's freaking out. Like that's sort of the interesting change between the original and this one. And there's that moment at the end that Barbara has when she's escaping the farmhouse, and there's the zombie with the doll, the mother zombie.
Mm-hmm.
And she's just kind of ducking around it and realizing like how slow and plodding it is, and having that emotional moment of like, we could have gotten away. This didn't have to happen. And then she, kills it and like scream cries for a second because of the futility in the situation. Like, there are those moments in this movie where the futility of it all really comes home, like Ben being shot up in the basement and finding the gas pump key.
Yeah, I was going to say about that, and I think that again is he's having a laugh. He's joking, isn't he? Or he's laughing about it. He's gone. It's gone so bad.
Yeah,
I'm just literally fucking. I've got nothing more I can do but laugh now. Do you know what I mean?
It's total gallows humor. Like, he's listening to the radio and they're like, "Well, the recently dead are coming." He's like, "Yeah, goddamn right they are." It's just understanding like this situation got so wildly out of hand and exploded on us, and you're also charting through that, like, Barbara's understanding of not only the situation with the zombies, but understanding human nature and kind of understanding that this isn't going to work out.
Yes, yeah, that's right. And I like that because, like you say, it's not just it is a fun zombie movie, but you've got, like I say, the characters. You've got a little question of faith in there as well, like you said, but it's not in your face, is it? But like I say, with the Ben character looking up, God, And I think him looking at the pump key at the end is another little dig at that as well, to say, oh God, this is just so sort of fucked up.
Yeah.
Whilst we're on it, just a little segue. There's another character that does that so well in a movie, which is George Clooney in From Dusk Till Dawn. It's just one of the phrases he comes out. It's a little segue here, but when he's talking to Harvey Keitel's character, and he's trying to sort of say, "You're a pastor, and you need to step up because we need that holy war." And he says, "Listen," he goes, "there's definitely a devil out there. That's for fucking sure. So there's definitely got to be a fucking god," he goes. I just love that little scene in the movie. So.
My favorite moment in all of From Dusk Till Dawn, I think, is when it's after that initial vampire attack, when he says, "Look, I don't believe in vampires either, but I think we can all agree that what we're dealing with out there is vampires."
Yeah.
and just like, look, let's dispense with all fucking around and deal with the situation as it stands. And I do think that's kind of the Barbara vibe, is like, why are we boarding ourselves up in this house when being in a place where we can maneuver some is the smart thing to do, because we can duck around them. Like, you walk briskly and you can get away from these things.
Yeah.
And you just have to avoid being surrounded.
Mm-hmm.
And I, Ben, I think is really the impediment. Like, he's the speed bump there because he wants the safety and security of the house, even though it's a false security.
Mm-hmm.
And she's already moved past that of understanding, like, a house no longer represents that in this world.
No,
a house is a place you can be trapped.
That's
not.
Yeah.
And by the end of the movie, when she's looking around at the other human beings who have survived and are, in theory, much like the end of the first one, like, there's a suggestion like, oh, we've kind of turned the tables on this to some degree, but also because human nature is what it is, we're probably still good and fucked.
Yes. Yeah.
And she has that, like, it's a line that doesn't exist in the original, and it's one of the, again, a thing that probably presaged The Walking Dead quite a bit, where she says, "We're them and they're us."
Yeah.
And one of the hillbillies, I think this is one of played by John Skipp and Craig Spector, two splatterpunk horror writers I like a whole lot, cameo in this movie. And one of them is like, "What?" And she's just like, "Nothing." I'm not wasting my breath trying to explain this concept to you fucking backwoods yokels.
Yeah, exactly. And that's saying the world really has changed, isn't it? It's changed, but it hasn't, because I think what we're dealing with here has always been there in our roots. And I think that is really cemented when she shoots Harry Cooper in the head, doesn't she? When they, just boom, that's it. No, because you're a woman, mate. You know what I mean? That's it. Boom. There you go.
Yeah, and that's another change from the original, where Barbara, first of all, did not survive in the original. Spoilers for a movie that's 53 years old.
Exactly.
But you had your chance, people. But in this one, not only does she survive, but she is playing judge, jury, and executioner, because she was there to see the horribleness of what happened in that farmhouse at the end, where it's just a shootout with Ben and this old dude who wanted to confine himself to the cellar. And that's the, of course, the secret sauce of all of the Romero zombie films, and any zombie film that's worth anything, is that the zombies are metaphor. They are the backdrop. And what the real problem is the people in the house.
Yeah.
Everyone could have survived if they had just stopped to think for 2 seconds and not been entirely selfish. Maybe Tom was shooting the lock off the gas pump. One of the dumber things that you could do.
I would have thought him being possibly a guy that has been working on the farm might have known that highly flammable cellulant petroleum is. I thought you might have just thought that. But,
I can, for myself, I can kind of chalk that up to, look, it's a tense situation. He is reacting badly in a very high pressure environment. It's just making a bad decision in the spur of the moment. But it is truly stupid.
Yeah, I suppose that's a good point. It's how people act in desperation, isn't it? He probably knew that possibly would happen, but he's thinking, because it's so shit that's going on, I'm going to give it a go, and it turns out south for him. But the other thing I was going to mention is, well, just a little hint of comedy I picked up from the guy on TV, the news guy. He's just acting like he's broadcasting that there might be an accident between two vehicles on the highway. The way he's sort of talking about this zombie outbreak. And he's, just something's come in. Hang on. Oh, they think it might be contaminated water. There you go, people. That's like, there's no sense of urgency about him, I think it's just done as a bit of a comedy or something,
It's definitely an idea that he seems very skeptical.
Yeah.
And, nobody can quite wrap their head around that this is happening. But you're right. I think the fact that he is so sort of matter of fact is pretty great. I like the another quick cameo, but Russell Steiner, the original Johnny, the sheriff saying, "Oh, they're dead. They're all messed up," which is one of my favorite lines from any movie ever. Is the dude say, well, or do they pose a threat? Well, they're dead. They're all messed up. I think it's just a hilarious line.
Yeah.
And I'm glad that they brought it back. Again, I think the thing that I like most about this remake is that they understand what was great about the original Night of the Living Dead, and they're like, okay, we need this line and we need this moment, and we need that moment where instead of a bunch of hillbillies shooting Ben at the end of Night of the Living Dead, which certainly was a social statement to some degree.
Yeah.
That in this one, it's more Barbara being the assertive one and being like, I can't let this guy live after what he's done.
Mm-hmm.
And a repetition of the line from the original, like, here's another one for the pile, but it comes out of Barbara's mouth in reference to Mr. Cooper to say, like, this asshole just didn't deserve to live.
Yeah.
And in this new world that we have created, or that has been visited upon us, then we can't let a person like this survive. Like, the only way that they're going to make it out is to have people like Ben, not Mr. Cooper. You need the people that are willing to work together to solve this problem. But I think Barbara also acknowledges that, that's just not human nature. Like, seeing these dudes take shots at the zombies hanging from the trees and stuff.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, that's not necessarily right either, is it? Do you know what I mean? And that's where she's sort of thinking we're just as bad as they are. Do you know what I mean? We're just as fucked up. But as a little light ray of hope, there's still going to be people like Ben moving on from this. I would imagine she's going to have to go out and find that, in the world, there's still good out there. And
yeah.
And also, like, I should have mentioned this at the beginning, but I love that conversation that she has with her brother in the car as well, where where this character's progressed from having a discussion with her brother about, I don't know why we're visiting the grave. They would never drive 200 miles to come and see us, and it's like as they're driving to the sort of graveyard, to her then basically shooting this guy in the face and saying, right, the world's fucked, so it's gone from that to that in that very short space of time.
Yeah, I guess in a lot of ways she has always sort of been, the character willing to go out of her way. Like, she's making this big drive, so that, she can do the right thing, whether or not it, the gesture is what's important.
Yeah.
And being able to be a human being who cares about other people, and even in their death, like, doing the thing that is decent and respectful, and sort of understanding, like, maybe she's in the minority. And I think it's hard not to watch a movie like this and think about the pandemic.
Oh yeah,
because there's so many analogies, and it's like, oh yeah, no, we're, as a species, we are easily frightened, and when we are frightened, we do dumb and selfish things. And I think somebody much smarter than me pointed out, like, what the pandemic taught us is if there were a zombie outbreak, it wouldn't be that people didn't believe it. They would like meet the zombies on the road and say it was their choice to be a zombie. It just shows that, like, we as a species, the world over, have this innate sort of selfishness, and when presented with a challenge or a scary situation like a virus that you can't control, then we react badly and tribally, and like, it turns out Romero was right. Like, he was a cynical guy, but it turns out the cynicism is probably well placed.
Absolutely. And the other thing, I have this discussion quite a lot about the zombie apocalypse, and what I like about the zombie apocalypse is the unlikely hero in that situation. So you might just have a pizza delivery guy, and I think that's mentioned again in Walking Dead, where Rick Grimes is, I can't remember the name of the character now, but it's the Chinese character in it.
Glenn.
Glenn. Because Rick Grimes says to him, because Glenn basically comes out and comes up with this plan. He says, if we do this and we do that, dun 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 dun. And he's talking to Rick Grimes, who's an authoritative guy in the real world, shall we say. And then Rick comes out and says, so what was you doing, when the shit wasn't going down? He said, I was a pizza delivery guy. And what I love about that is when people are in the normal sort of system, they're just going about their own business. But when the shit goes down, it can just be that unlikely character it's going to save your ass. Do you know what I mean? Because it's kind of giving these people the opportunity to think outside the box and cut all the red tape off and go, right, let's do this. Do you know what I mean? And just one of my fascinations with all that. Do you know what I mean? So people will rise from where you probably least likely think they would do. Do you know what I mean? It's always an interesting concept to me, that.
Well, it strips away the veneer of, it doesn't matter what your socioeconomic class is. It doesn't matter what your background is. What matters is your character.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
And the people that do well for the most part in these movies are the people who are thinking of others as well as themselves.
Yeah.
You know, like in Day of the Dead, it is the people who are trying to help everyone that kind of make it.
Yeah.
And yeah, it's really, I always thought that these movies presented a pretty grim view of humanity, and I think in some ways it's optimistic.
Yeah.
In a way that I never gave it credit for, because I think people are actually worse than these movies suggest.
Yeah, well, like I said, I think I said this before. Darren Wilson from the Psychosomatic podcast, shout out to him. He came out and said something when we was talking about the Mouth of Madness on that episode, and he said something that really made a lot of sense to me. He said 80% of the world is going to be cynical. It's going to be cynical, and we ain't going to make it. But he said there's always that 20% that we just might, and I think that 20% is that what you just said there, is that person that's going to try and help you out and think outside the box. So it's kind of like that sort of formula. So I think with the zombie, I think that's why people love zombie films. There's a little bit in there for whatever you want. You know, you can watch it because it's just a survival movie. There's action. There's, if you like, a bit of gore and all that sort of stuff. And then there's a little bit of social commentary in there as well. So I think that's why the zombie genre has lasted the way it has, because it's something that we can sort of relate to in a funny sort of way. And
you can put anything in place of the zombies. You know, in your head, it can be COVID, it can be climate change, it can be any number of ills plaguing the species.
Yeah.
And because all zombies are at the end of the day is this, nameless horde of, flesh eaters that are coming for you, and you can't reason with them and you can't outrun them. They're just going to continue to come. It's the thing you've got to turn around and face at some point. And that's why it's an easy metaphor for a lot of stuff, know. But I think it still works. And again, I think it works best because it sort of illuminates what is both best and worst about human beings in that situation. None of these movies, short of something like Warm Bodies, none of these movies are about the zombies. They're about the people that the zombies are after. Yeah. And trying to, chart their course through this, hell on earth that has occurred. And what do you do with that? And how do you react to that? That's always the big question. It's not the fact of the zombies. It's how do you react to the zombies that's interesting.
Yeah. So, when someone said to me, RJ, how are you dealing with the pandemic? I said, well, I've watched Night of the Living Dead and Dawn of the Dead a few times, so I think I'm going to be all right. Don't worry, So.
Yeah. Well,
I think I might just be all right.
Teach you how to behave. Yeah. You gotta, you've got to behave as if other people exist.
Yeah. I'm just waiting for the Tom Savini motorcycle gang to turn up in the shopping mall.
Man, no shit. It at some point. And that was the really sad and frustrating thing, especially here in the U.S. in particular. There was a portion of the population that reacted to COVID in the worst possible way. Mm-hmm. And it was one of the most disheartening things I've ever seen in my lifetime. But right alongside that were the people who, were like healthcare workers on the front lines of that, and the people that were celebrating those people every day at the height of the pandemic and so forth. And that stuff, it was like, oh, well, that's the good side of humanity. I mean, it's unfortunate that we got to deal with the flip side, which are people that just refuse to believe that anything could possibly be true if they can't see it and touch it.
Yeah.
But, it was like I said, it was totally like a Romero Living Dead movie where it was like,
absolutely.
Oh yeah, people are terrible. If you put, it was the, there's a line in The Mist that I think of a lot where Thomas Jane talks about civilization, and he says, yeah, but you turn out the lights and cut the power and civilization falls away pretty fast.
Absolutely. Yeah, I totally agree with that. And that's one of the things that I go by, really, generally, up until today, really. You know what I mean? It's it doesn't... They say we're only 3 meals away from anarchy or something like that, aren't we? It ain't that far.
Right. Yeah.
And, in the UK at the moment, we've had the old petrol crisis, That didn't take a lot to happen, You just think, holy shit.
We had a couple of those. We had a toilet paper run that was like at the beginning of COVID, like people buying 4 cases of toilet paper like it was the last time they were ever going to be able to buy it. And you had, that sort of Kevin Bacon from Animal House, like, please remain calm.
Yeah, that's it. Yeah.
Where people were just like, if you buy just a roll or 2, we're all going to be fine. So just please don't buy cases. And instead, what had to happen is stores had to enforce, like, no, you can only buy 3 rolls at a time or whatever, because people just, when they get scared, they panic and they react badly and stupidly and selfishly.
Yeah, but that's
and like you saw recently, because I was following that a little bit on the news. The big run on gas stations, and then I think it was Boz recently who posted a picture that was an empty gas station that was like, what a difference a couple of weeks makes.
He did, he posted that, I think it was yesterday on his page. And there was I'll shout it out as a friend and listener, Darren Randall. He listens to the show. He posted on his page as well, somebody looking out their bathroom window with the bathroom just literally stocked up with toilet rolls, and they were looking out the window saying, oh, look at those idiots at the petrol station filling up. Do you know what I mean? The irony. It was great, yeah.
It's so depressing sometimes when you see, like, again, you just see that kind of exaggerated, frightened behavior, and it's just people who seem to forget that, we there is such a thing as a social contract. We exist in a society with other people. We have to think about them as well as ourselves in a perfect world.
And
the fact that, there are, political parties and there are social movements that trade on the idea that fuck everybody else, you're what's important, don't let anyone tread on your freedoms. And, that ignores the fact that, like, well, there are other people around you, and sometimes other people around you need more than you do at a given time, and sometimes you're the one who needs something.
Yeah.
But if we all operate from that kind of solipsistic, selfish place, then we're all fucked.
Mm-hmm.
And that, I think, is the true lesson of all of these movies, is if we all work together, everything will be fine. If we don't, we're all fucked.
We're fucked, yeah. As humanity, I suppose you could say. So, I mean, there you go. Rounding up for the Night of the Living Dead remake. It's a fun movie. You take it for as you will, but there's also, like you say, as we've discussed today, this is a great conversation about the zombie genre on the whole. You look a little closer, there's that social commentary, and the panic, like you say, just with the character Tom, that is in panicking, doing something stupid in that scenario, or in that case. So, okay then, Bo, I think we'll we'll wrap it up on that one.
Yeah, we'll end on we're all fucked.
Well, yeah, basically, I like that. Yeah, we're basically fucked. So, yeah.
So, if I don't know, maybe this very episode of this podcast is the point where things turn around and people start, working together to make the world a better place. Let's aim for that. This is the kumbaya moment.
Yeah, this is it. I listened to Bo and RJ on Bitesize, and suddenly my life changed.
Right. The scales fell away from my eyes, and I realized that what's truly important is that we all work together. I'm all for it. That would be great.
Oh dear. Thanks, Bo. It's been great. I love it. I just love our conversations. Where we go and all that. But these are great. These are great topics. These are good things to talk about.
It's hard not to when you're talking about like these Living Dead movies because they are so ultimately kind of moralistic in their way. And I tend to subscribe to a lot of that kind of internal morality that a lot of these movies portray. And at the end, I watched the amusement park recently that Romero PSA scare movie about getting old.
Oh yeah.
And that too, it is such a Romero film because even though it was essentially an educational film, it is just again Romero saying we've just got to take care of each other. That's all it ever boils down to is just take care of each other.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. That's the and I sometimes wonder whether if Tom Savini just happens to be listening to this show, whether he's got to the end of this episode, goes, guys, man, I didn't even think I put that in this movie. You horror fans, you dissect these movies, and I didn't even know I did that. It's the same with John Carpenter's The Thing. I sometimes think, because that film's been so dissected by fans, especially on the Outpost 31 group, I wonder if JC's ever gone, man, but guys, where you coming up with all these ideas, It's like, wow.
John Carpenter, God bless him, is just too busy smoking weed, playing Destiny, and making music.
Oh,
to give a
yeah. That's it. Yeah.
And that's what I love about him. You have served your time, sir. You do whatever the hell it is that makes you happy for the rest of your life.
Yeah, that's it. I mean, like I say, when you see that executive producer credit on a remake of one of these films, I think it's just JC picking up a phone. Yeah, just send me the paycheck. Okay.
Yeah,
executive producer credit.
Yeah, we might have even talked about this before, but one of my favorite lines from any director ever was Carpenter talking about, somebody asked him, how do you feel about people remaking your movies? And he says, I love it because every time I get a phone call telling me that somebody wants to remake one of my movies, I hold out my hand and a check falls into it.
Yeah. Pays for my next video game and pack of cigarettes.
Right. Oh my God. The fact that guy is not just 85% lung cancer at this point is a miracle.
Yeah. He just keeps going on, doesn't he? God bless him. Oh my God.
Please, I hope he outlives me. Yeah. I want that guy to live forever. John Carpenter is a force of good in this world.
He's an absolute legend. All right, and Bo, so before we wrap the show up, as I said at the beginning of the show, I know you've been busy with your new show, The Dark Parade, and you're doing your 31 of Halloween. Just like to say, it was good to hear that you gave a little buzz on the Howling movie. Because
so good.
I like that film. Yeah, it gets mixed reviews, doesn't it? But yeah, I'm a fan. Especially
I think if you're a fan of horror movies and you don't like The Howling, I don't know what's wrong with you. That movie is such a delight. It has such a good time being a werewolf movie.
Yep.
A lot of every now and again you see those horror movies that seem slightly embarrassed by being what they are. And The Howling is Joe Dante putting his big werewolf dick on the table.
Yeah.
And being like, we are a werewolf movie, and how do you like that?
Well, you got Boteen doing the effects right off the just before he did the thing, or he might have been doing the thing at the same time. Dick Miller, oh God almighty, how do you just want to find that occult shop and go in there and spend time in that shop with Dick Miller? Do you know what I mean? Just, you want books on witchcraft? Hey, I've got silver bullets, $25 a buck, you know, trying to make a buck here, it's just great, isn't it,
Yeah, I would push that ladder around for him all day long.
Always, yeah.
It is so good. Dick Miller is amazing, and the fact that movie trucks. It has, it's 90 minutes long, and that thing moves. So I love the pacing of it. I love the performances in it. I just love everything about it. I think it's really well done. It's real tongue in cheek, but it's not afraid to be kind of scary, but it's also not afraid to be a little silly. It's the fact that and American Werewolf came out in the same year is just an embarrassment of riches.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's right. Yeah, because I know Rick Baker was supposed to do the special effects, but then he did it for American Werewolf, didn't he?
He had promised Landis years before that if he ever Landis had been sitting on that American Werewolf script for a while, and he wanted Rick Baker to do it, and then Rick Baker signed on to The Howling. Landis called him up and was like, "Hey, remember that werewolf movie I was going to do? I'm going to do it now, and you promised that you would do the effects."
Yeah.
And so it was a weird situation where Rick Baker kind of both recommended Rob Bottin for The Howling, as he was leaving the Howling production. He was like, "Hey, I'm not going to leave you in the lurch. You need to get this guy Rob Bottin to do the effects for you."
Yeah.
But also kind of I think he's got a consulting credit on The Howling. Rick Baker does, but
I think because he spent a little bit of time at the beginning, didn't he, before he switched? I think.
Yeah.
But
yeah,
but Bottin, can't take nothing away from him. And the other thing with The Howling, I've always thought that it just feels like the John Carpenter werewolf movie that he never did, and that's taken nothing away from Joe Dante, because I know they were obviously friends at that time. But it just, everything about it's got a bit of a JC aesthetic about it. The title, the special effects, the way the film's put together. Just because I know JC never did a werewolf movie, but I always put it down that if he did, it would have been something like that.
Yeah, it's terrific. The Howling is so much
fun.
No,
I got a love for it. Maybe after the busyness of Halloween, we'll get. I've already done The Howling. God, you know what, Bob? I'm going to end up doing a review on a film that I've done already.
At some point, I'll tell you what. I'll let you know, because on Dark Parade, at some point, Dark Parade is kind of my show where I can actually do series of films. Mm-hmm. We're doing Psycho right now. We're going to do Night of the Demons after that. And after that, I'm not sure. I've got a couple of ideas, but at some point I'll do The Howling just to do that run.
Yeah, let me know and I'll join you on that one.
I'll hook up with you for that one, and we'll get deep into The Howling. But yeah, it's a terrific movie, and it's a great Halloween movie because there are all kinds of references to other werewolf movies and books and all kinds of stuff littered throughout it. Like I said, it's just a movie that loves being a werewolf movie, and even more so than American Werewolf to some degree. It's a little more tongue-in-cheek even than that.
I like it when one of the werewolves, I think it's a head honcho from the convent, he gets shot by a silver bullet at the end, and he goes, "They're good." He literally compliments the bullet, doesn't he? He goes, "Oh God, that works," It's almost like he's thinking it might have been just a myth, and then when he gets shot, it's like, "Oh my God, yeah, I can feel this reaction." So I don't think I've ever seen that in a werewolf movie where the werewolf's actually going, "Shit, that works." So it's quite clever.
Yeah, it's a terrific film. I can't say enough good things about it.
All the
movies I've done for the 31 days this year, it's probably the one that on rewatch, at the end of the watch, I was just like, man, I am so energized and excited to talk about, not just to talk about this movie, but I there's nothing I love more than seeing a good horror movie and seeing a good horror movie that I haven't seen in a while, and I had kind of forgotten how good it was. Mm-hmm. And so having that experience of just man, that was even better than I remembered,
Yeah.
It's like being jacked up on Halloween candy.
And the other thing I was just going to say is that, it's these films that I generally enjoy, like the one we've talked about today in The Howling. They're only sort of 80, 89 minutes long, which is quite telling, really. Do you know what I mean? You kind of get that 30-minute beginning, middle, end. Do you know what I mean? And it just works. There you go. Chuck in everything, special effects, all that. Good characters, good story. There you go.
With rare exceptions, when horror movies edge towards 2 hours and 2 hours plus, you really got to be doing something special. Like Midsommar, I'll allow because that movie goes places, and you kind of need that slow build for it. But for the most part, if you're a horror movie, 90 minutes is where you ought to be.
Yeah.
I'm a big believer in that. You need a quick pace, and because I talked about Ginger Snaps too before I talked about The Howling, and that was a movie that I really like, but I think that movie would benefit from being about 15 minutes shorter too, and it's hour 45, hour 50, like that. You trim that up, and you've got a much snappier film that I think works a little better.
Yeah, that generally works as a rule. So, thank you both. Thank you for coming onto the show today. What's your next? What's the next thing you're putting out there in the podcast world before we wrap up?
Yeah, so I'll be like I said on Dark Parade. That's a new show that I'm doing, but it's sort of an umbrella to do a bunch of dumb shit. I'm doing a series right now on Psycho. So we did Psycho 1, Psycho 2 is dropping today as I record this. Both of those with Jerry Cortez, aka Mr. Venom.
Yeah.
In addition to that, which those episodes are kind of the main episodes, and there's we definitely do some research and try to give you information that you probably don't know about those movies, or at least discuss them in a way that is a little more in depth than a lot of the stuff that I listen to. And that's one of the reasons I wanted to do the show that way, is to be like, hey, let's really dig into this movie and talk about the themes of the film and really get into some stuff that you probably didn't know about it.
Yeah.
So that's been a lot of fun. And then in addition to that, there's again, all this is under the Dark Parade podcast banner. There's Found Footage Fool, which is me talking about found footage movies because I watch way too many of those. And those tend to be, to borrow your term, tend to be kind of bite-sized looks at those movies. And but I also have a list of 5 criteria that I judge it against. Like a good found footage movie needs to do these 5 things. And so that's how I grade all those found footage movies.
Right.
And then Heart of Horror will be dropping soon, which is me and Kate Pollock talking about movies that are both horrific and have an element of romance or something about relationships. And it's just an excuse to get Kate to tell stories about her dating life, which is hilarious. And and I can't wait for people to hear that. And then, of course, on legionpodcast.com, that is where you can find not just this show, but Dark Parade and, Darren's show, Psychosemantic, and Cinema Psyops and Cinema Beef, and like just a number of podcasts. And that's where also this month you can find me doing little mini drops every day of, like we talked about that episode that I did on The Howling. But every single day, first thing in the morning, you should be able to find a new episode of the 31 Days of Halloween. And that's been a whole lot of fun. This is the second year I've done it where there's been a new show every day, and I'll absolutely do it again next year. Lord willing, and the creek don't rise, as they say. It's my like it's such a great way to get in the spirit of things. And this is what we live for. This is the best month out of the year. It's Halloween. Fall is starting. Trick or treaters are out. It's the best. I love Halloween so much, and I love celebrating it all month long. So, check out all of that stuff, and I hope you enjoy it. If you don't, find me on Facebook or Twitter or Instagram at Legion Podcasts. You can also find me at Dark Parade Pod. Find me those places, and you can yell at me and tell me how I've ruined your life.
or improved it on how to survive the zombie genre. Yeah, all right, Bo, thank you for that. Also, I'm going to give a little shout out to Gary Hill from Cinema Beef Podcast, who's also doing the 31 Howling Beasts of Halloween, which I'm involved with as well. I think we're all involved, aren't we, on Legion? I think Legion's gone through the roof, isn't it, this year on Halloween? There's a lot of content going on out there.
Yeah, we're dropping a ton of stuff.
Yeah.
It's probably there's at least something every day, if not a couple of things every day. So yeah, I mean, you're if you are not subscribed to Legion Podcasts on your podcatcher of choice, you are certainly missing out on new and interesting stuff. And the thing I like about it too is that both with Gary doing the 31 Days of Howling Beast and me doing 31 Days of Halloween, like all of that stuff is like 15 to 30 minutes long, so it's not forever. You know, it's not like these big 3-hour shows that you see drop sometimes. So it's something that you can just, hey, you got to take a trip to the store, throw on one of those, and that'll keep you company. Yeah,
absolutely. No. All right, Bo. Well, thank you very much for coming on to the show. It's always great having you coming on here. Like I say, I keep reaching out to you. Hey, Bo, I've got this one. So,
yep.
No doubt have you back onto the show in the future for us to talk movies, horror movies, and stuff like that. So, all right, guys. Well, as a little bit of admin for the show, as you know, I'm a proud member of the Legion Podcast Network with Bo Ransdell and all the other gang on there. So go and check out all the other shows. I will be coming back soon with the Boz from Little Pot of Horrors to talk about American Werewolf in London, so that'll be coming soon. I've also got Kung Fu Dave coming back for The Crow. I'm going to be trying to drop that in this month before the end of October, so look out for those shows as well. And you can find the show on iTunes, Spotify, several other players. If you put in Bitesize Cinema into Google, it'll take you somewhere where you can listen to the show. And I've also got a Facebook page where I'm most active, so let me know if there's any films that you want me to review, or just put any comments on there and tell me how you enjoy the show. So there you go. As always, keep it bite-sized, keep it...
If you enjoyed this show, then make sure you check out the other great shows on the Legion Podcast Network, like Cinema Psyops, Cinema Beef, Devour the Podcast, Duncan and Bo Come Correct, Exploding Heads Horror Movie Podcast, Friday the 13th, Get Slayed, The Hellming Power Hour, Hello, This is the Doom Show, Hero Hero Go Show, Kill the Cast, Underwater Kaiju from Outer Space, Jerry Hates Action, Legion After Dark, Mental Health, Obsessive Cinema, Discourse, Pick 6 Movies, the podcast by The Cemetery, the podcast on Haunted Hill, the Psychosemantic Podcast, Rick Radio, House of Wax, Dude Looks Like the 80s, Rabbit and Red Radio, the Shadecast, Short Bus Cinema, 2 Drink Minimum Commentaries, the VD Clinic, Who Will Survive Horror Podcast, and Witch vs. the Doomsday Clock. With such a wide spread of shows, there is guaranteed to be a niche for you to fall in love with. Horror, politics, movies, books, sex, music, commentaries, health, video games, kaiju, action, news, comedy, and opinions that would most likely get you killed in some parts of the world. We are proud to bring you some of the best podcasting in the world. Check us out at www.legionpodcast.com, iTunes, Spotify, Stitcher, YouTube, and any other dark corner of the internet where podcasts can be found.